So I won't take much time. So I'm Ashmat Khan, one of the students of Department of Business Management, and your moderator come host for today's discussion. And I just introduce in this chain of amazing uh, panel members that we have today, starting with a very own Professor Dr. Deshpande sir, who has such an enormous career of a great amount of experience as a teaching member, and has hold so many good number of academic positions, administrative positions as well. So he's recently been the pro vice chancellor of Nagpur University, officiating, and right now and has been serving Department of Business Management as a professor for many years, and has various other positions of academic administration, and also has been the ex-officiating registrar and headed the department also. And he's written a reference book on macroeconomic analysis, Indian economy and financial institution markets. And he was associated with the IG IDEA for a project on the suicide of the farmers, and has submitted a report. Very famous Kelkar committee he was associated with, and he has headed and various other communities, management councils, been associated with Rotary clubs, and through and through, it's been enormous, all dimensional, multi-dimensional kind of experience, I would say. And the very interesting part is that he under him many students have been awarded the PhD, and one of them is a panel member today, Radhika ma'am. That's such a nice feeling. So, and yeah, so this is such an enormous thing. He coordinated an international conference in Sydney, Australia, a gold medalist, a very good economist, I would say. So I can just go on and on with all these panel members that we have today, but we have to restrict ourselves somewhere. So shifting we have next is Anita ma'am, Anita Rao, and she's the partner at MR International Nagpur, and a very accomplished entrepreneur and management professional, founder of Nagarjan Ayurvedic Treatment Center 2002. And she's currently pursuing a PhD in the study of emergence of entrepreneurship, with a special reference to the opportunities and challenges of the startup ecosystem in Nagpur urban. And she's published a research paper which was selected by the conference in Sydney conference in January, SIBA conference in January 2020 at Australia. She's presented the paper on 10th and 11th of January 2020 at Sydney. And she has been the convener of the Entrepreneur Forum, VIA. She has been very associated with Vidarbha Industries Association, conducted talks and motivational programs. Such an honor to have you, ma'am. And the president of the, ex-president of the VIA Ladies Wing. So many awards and accolades for an entrepreneur to have. It's such a motivating thing for us individuals to be an entrepreneur in ourselves. And she has been awarded as the Best Lady Entrepreneur of the Year 2006 by VIA, Outstanding Women Entrepreneur of the Year, International Women Entrepreneur of 2011, Rashtriya Udyog Samman Puraskar 2012, Excellence Award for Leadership as VIA Liu President, and CIBMRD Scroll of Honor for Leadership, Rotary DSC SMA National Award for Excellence. To just name a few, I literally had to select, there's a long list of it. Moving forward, we have Dr. Surya Kumari ma'am, who's the founder president of the ALT, which is the Academy of Life and People Skills, and professor at Indian Maritime University, Chennai. And she's a life skills coach and an academician turned entrepreneur. She has done research on microfinance and women empowerment, and has met with many laurels. So a few of her research findings have become a reality. For example, you see India poised to become a payments bank. And she was with Citibank as a quality analyst, where she notably designed 300 plus templates for customer communication. That's very interesting to know, ma'am. She's associated as HR faculty with various NGOs, where we have like Mohan, which is the pioneer institute in coordinating organ transplant in the country. Vajra is another NGO, which that trains girls' schools dropouts in self-defense skills, and many others. So Dr. Surya has been nominated as expert member, Healthcare Sector Skill Council, India, for transplant coordinators. And she is one of the 25 nominated from across the country, and the only life skills coach among all the senior doctors from defense and other hospitals and social workers. She's a blogger, a writer, and she has published several articles and reputed journals. Pleasure to have you, ma'am. Moving forward, we have Dr. Radhika Lobo, ma'am, professor of economics and head at strategic plan implementation team at School of Business Studies and Social Sciences, Christ University, Bangalore. She has formerly headed Department of Business Economics, and she has been the director of IQAC. And she has been a part of several international and national exchange programs. And she holds a PhD degree for her work on Southeast Asian development experience and the role of international financial institutions. Published a book titled Southeast Asian Crisis, which is an economic analysis of it, and many research papers and in books and journals of repute, and presented papers at national and international conferences. And right now she's working on a major research project which is awarded by the Center for Research Projects, Christ University. I am really overwhelmed to have these great personalities with us, and I hope this is going to be a great session for all of us to learn and to imbibe what from their experiences and knowledge that they hold. It's going to be an amazing one. So let's start. It's already 10:17. So as per the planning, we go with Deshpande sir first, who's going to present an overview. And so sir, we have to restrict within 10 minutes. Okay. So I hold on. I just this is your turn now. You can. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashma. Thank you for a generous introduction. Greetings and welcome to Department of Business Management Conversations COVID-19. Today we have assembled an excellent panel of experts who will be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on the Indian economy, opportunities and challenges, the government's responses to date, and ideas for additional action that will almost certainly be needed in the future. And I'm joined today by three experts, as has already been told. Dr. Surya Kumari from Indian Maritime University, Chennai, Anita Rao, partner MR International, Nagpur, and Dr. Radhika Lobo, Professor, Christ University, Bangalore. Friends, we all are aware that the kind of crisis each and every country is facing, and they are being called unprecedented, dramatic, and it's enormous. And we have never seen anything like this that's anywhere near this rapid. And even aside from this rapidity, we have never seen in my lifetime or any of our lifetimes seen anything like this. And this is going to be the deepest hit to the labor market, to the economy in general, and whatever we have seen since Great Depression. I think similar kind of situation, but with more kind of crisis. And therefore, it will take longer for the economy to fully recover. And therefore, it would be interesting and important to understand how economy is going to suffer. And therefore, let us remind ourselves of the lessons the pandemic is teaching us. So when one member of the family falls sick, the entire family is affected, the nation is affected, and then other communities in other nations. And therefore, we have to understand that the well-being of one individual has an impact.
Sir, I'll just interrupt for a minute. Okay, now it's cleared. The timer was covering the slides. All right.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you so much. That's it.
So what I'm just trying to tell you, so how this particular COVID and the coronavirus, actually it reminded us that it is the kind of anubandhan, or what we call as interconnectedness, that sustains all life on earth, and we are all in this together, whether we choose to see it or not. And therefore there are many dimensions, health dimensions of the pandemic, And as we all know what kind of health capacities we have. So there are two doctors which are required for this kind of crisis. One is medical doctor, most essential, and of course economics doctor also, in order to set right the economy on track. So many have pointed out that there are some threat, there are some opportunities, and what kind of opportunities we will have, that we would be discussing shortly. Of course, China's exports, they are badly affected, and there is difficulties in production and exports. And therefore, many experts have pointed out that this is going to be the opportunity for India. That also we have to find out that how really one can consider this as an opportunity. Whatever the imports we make from China, that also is going to be affected, and near about $60 million material and other kinds of resources we import from China in order to manufacture our pharmaceutical products. And therefore, how this is going to be affected, so one can say roughly 65 to 75% chemicals, they come from China. And therefore, with the kind of changes which are occurring, how we are going to be affected. So there are threats, and of course there are some advantages, but probably you would find that threats are more, and therefore there is role of central bank, there is role of many agencies relating to the revival of the economy. So many a times people talk about that whether this recovery will be of V shape, U shape, or W shape. But I feel a lot depends on the measures we take, and it also depends on the kind of industry. So V shape or U shape, that vary industry by industry, and recovery also will vary by industry. So people may buy more cars to avoid risk of infection in public transport, and therefore there is a possibility that automobile sector may revive in the process. And that is how you find that a lot of changes are going to take place in the process. The another important area which needs to be discussed is about the fiscal stimulus and the fiscal stimulus package, and how far this fiscal stimulus package would be useful in order to recover the economy. So some of the industries, they would suffer, but we need definitely a mantra for revival strategy. And there could be assembling, and instead of making India, we may have to think about assemble India and assemble India movement, and that also one can think in that direction. Economy, of course, was slowing down before this pandemic. So 4 to 5% was the growth. Normal growth was 7 to 8%. And therefore, otherwise also the economy was slowing down. But this particular crisis would affect the growth rate badly. And some are estimating that it may hover around 2% or so. And therefore, what we have to understand, that roughly 70% of our economy is almost coming to halt. And therefore, there are harsh economic consequences that we have to find out. And the worst affected sector, probably we can discuss further, but I will just bring to your notice that MSME, that is the sector which is having almost 7 to 8 crores with 15 crore workers, and therefore that is the sector which is going to be affected badly. So in general, there are 40 crore workers, we can say, and out of these 15 crore workers in MSME, and therefore that is going to be the hardest hit sector. And therefore government is also undertaking some steps in order to revive. So cause relating to loss of pain, loss of income, and that is how it requires government support. I think my time is getting over, but I would be covering some of the issues during our discussion. And the three areas which we are going to cover mainly is about the international trade, entrepreneurship movement, banking sector, and of course, education also is going to be affected. Already, many universities and education institutes, they are facing problem relating to conduction of examination. And therefore, online education, how it is going to help the students, that also needs to be seen. And what type of institutes and universities would survive, and what changes likely to take place. There is a possibility that some faculties demand for certain courses may go down, and some new courses demand would crop up, and therefore we have to see how education sector would move after this pandemic, and that also can be covered during the course of discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to put forth my views. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Deshpande, for giving me this opportunity. And even though it is virtual, it is such an honor to share the dais with you. In fact, having invited Surya and Anita along with me, our association goes back in the day when we used to have all these kind of discussions in the university cafeteria. And I think the university cafeteria is the most underrated place to learn. So it's one of the best places to learn. And I'm sure Anita and Surya and so many other friends of mine will agree with me. So what is it that I'm going to speak on? I thought I would talk about the challenges and opportunities for the export sector. Later on, that is during the time of discussion, I'll speak on the gender issues, not because that is less important, it's just because I know a little less about that aspect. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I'm going to start with the world trade scenario. So look at this slide that I got from WTO. Of course, nobody must be really paying attention to what the WTO says nowadays, but the WTO says that the world trade is expected to come down between 13% to 32% in 2020. Now, for the benefit of the students who are listening in, let me bring your attention to that green line and that red line. And, you know, Dr. Deshpande said a short while ago that there are two types of doctors who are needed, and the second one are the economists. So these economists are very clever people who give you a wide range, you know, from 13% to 32%. So in the most best case scenario, it will be 13%, and otherwise it is 32%. So we can always say that I told you so. You know, that's the whole objective over here. Now, can we go to the next slide? Well, the pandemic came, you know, at a time when things were really bad already. I mean, not that any time when the pandemic comes in, it could be good, but already the global economic order was quite bad. If you look at the pictures that I've put there, one is of the US-China trade war, then the, you know, sanctions, that means the unilateral sanctions which have already been in place. You have also had, you know, rising trade protectionism of other sorts, say this particular picture that I have put says that there are some 7,000 protectionist trade barriers that have been used by some 60 countries across the world. So, you know, when we talk about neo-protectionism, for the teachers, you have almost 7,000 to choose from. So that's the kind of range that we are talking about. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. So when I was, you know, preparing for this talk, I found one very interesting report which came out, I think, just 2 days ago, and one of my colleagues from another association had sent it. And the report is made by EEPC, that is Engineering Export Promotion Council of India, RIS. Those who are into research will understand what I'm talking about. The exposure came through trade, through investment, obviously, you know, facilitated through or rather human capital movement facilitated through trade and investment. So if you look at the slide, you find China in black there. And China has huge amount of investment in Italy. And what kind of investment? One of them is that BRI, that is the Belt Road Initiative. If you look at Iran, again, China is one of Iran's largest trading partner. If you look at South Korea, you have, China has a high amount of export exposure to South Korea through this assembly line process, etc. So what I'm trying to get at is that, the physical proximity which has happened because of trade and investment has kind of led to this COVID-19 in a very big way. So obviously, those areas which will bring down the amount of physical, which could work without the physical proximity and still ensure trade and investment, are the areas which could succeed, so to say. Okay, so now that I've spoken a little bit about the world trade scenario, can we go to the next slide? And we look at what is happening in India. So that's the picture of what's happened in India. So in India, you find that the trade deficit is quite high. When I say trade deficit, again, for the benefit of the students, I'm not talking about the trade in services, only the trade in goods, right? So you do find that the exports overall has come down by 4.8% in the entire financial year, last year's. And the imports have come down by 9.1%, leaving quite a large trade deficit. What are the other issues that we are facing in the external sector? Next slide, please. Yeah, so as it is, I mean, just as I mentioned to you that there were certain kind of problems in the world economy pre-COVID, in India too, in the pre-COVID scenario, we had a almost flat kind of a export growth. So look at that graph and you will find that it's almost flat, and there has not been a impressive growth as it is. So this is the background, and naturally there is going to be a fallout of this. There is going to be a negative fallout of it. Next slide, please. So you do find that India's foreign trade policy has already come under the WTO scanner. So we provide a lot of export incentives to our exporters, and the WTO has found it non-compliant. No doubt we have, appealed to WTO, but we still don't know what's going to happen on that. Added to this, I guess my friend and colleague on the panel will tell you, Anita will tell you, that how there has been very low or no production at all in the MSME sector. You have a large amount of, a large proportion of exports coming from the MSME sector. 50% of the export orders, FICCI tells us, has already been cancelled. And earlier itself, there had been increased protectionism, which I mentioned to you the world over. So naturally, all these aspects are going to affect India's trade negatively. Yeah. So, but, we have a few positives. Next slide, please. And those positives are what are indicated on this particular slide. So maybe, a weak rupee in the short run period could help us overcome this situation, because typically in our textbooks, we do explain how when there is a fall in the value of the rupee, there will be a rise in exports, so on and so forth. But maybe in the short run, there could be some benefit that we could get from this. Then look at the oil price picture, which indicates that because of the drop in oil prices, our import bill could come down a little bit. However, if Modi ji is listening in, maybe he could bring down even our excise duty to some extent. And then, of course, if you look at our exports, we are part of the global supply chain, value chain, and therefore maybe, you know, to some extent, our exports like agriculture, say from the cotton exports, or organic chemicals, pharmaceuticals, these could grow to some extent. In the later part or the last part of my presentation, which is in a few seconds from now, you will understand that aspect in more you know, detail. And also the export promotion of capital goods, there's a scheme. So the DGFT seems to have had some kind of a epiphany moment, because they reduced, you know, the duties on these, you know, export linked import programs to a very large extent, just around 26th of February or so, which is just before it happened. Yeah, the next slide. So we come to the last part of my presentation, and that is to do with FDI. Yeah, so this obviously is another aspect of our external sector, and in very recent, in a very recent change, the FDI policy of our government has been changed, wherein now they are permitting, rather, you know, the change is wherein earlier they used to permit FDI from either the directly, that means that means either through the direct route or through the government route. Now, for almost all areas, the direct route was permitted. The government route was for investors coming from Pakistan and Bangladesh for obvious reasons. And now this has been extended to 7 countries which share our border. Read this as China very clearly, rather than say Bangladesh, Bhutan or Nepal or Myanmar, because Bangladesh and Pakistan was already plugged earlier itself. There is a little bit of, you know, I mean, there isn't, I would say, clarity as far as what could happen about the FDI if it is coming, say, through the Hong Kong route. We need to wait and watch there. Then the next slide, yeah. So there's also yesterday's news or day before yesterday's news, which says that the Modi government is in talks with the state government, saying that please give in India. Now, you know, when Ashmat read out my profile, she mentioned about a major research project that I'm doing. And during the course of that, I noticed that one of the biggest stumbling blocks for FDI to locate in India is that, you know, they were not allowed to, or easily, they couldn't easily access the land. So now what they're trying to do is they're permitting them to access, in fact, they're giving it to them on a platter. And what I'm told is 1,15,131 hectares of industrial land is going to be provided. And in what areas? To encourage FDI in what areas? Electrical, pharma, medical devices, electronics, chemicals, food processing, textiles. So this will also probably answer questions of students who are asking that which are the areas that they must go into, because these have very strong backward and forward linkages. And in which states? Again, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh, because that's where, you know, already we have, apart from Delhi, of course, was not mentioned in this paper. I think I will stop here because my time is up. I have just one slide, but I can complete it later on if possible. Yeah. Thank you, Ashmat.
A pleasure, ma'am. Okay.
So good morning, everyone. So thank you for the lovely introduction, Ashmat. And thank you for the invite, Dr. Anand Deshmukh, HOD of Department of Business Management, and Dr. Deshpande sir and Sneha Deshpande ma'am, if you're there. It's always a pleasure to revisit Business Management Department and, of course, Economics Department. Anyway, so can I have the next slide, please?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So this, I would call this a black swan event, which is basically a very rare occurrence which happens in a very remote area and a very small impact maybe when it occurs, but its consequences are so huge and the severity is so huge. And this is COVID-19, which has affected all of us. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So I'm going to go very, very briefly into the education sector. Can I have the next slide? Yeah. So I'm going to go very briefly into the education sector, and we are all in this together. I guess this is what all of you wanted. No school, have fun, let's stay at home. And I think the college and school or university students are having it even more nice that you can log in, put your audio and video mute and get attendance too. Is that what is happening, students? Anyway, jokes apart, let's go on to the next slide. This is how education has been disrupted. There's a total shutdown of schools and colleges. Fear among students, especially who are going for placements and kids seeking college admission, and people who got new job offers, I think it is going into maybe it will withdraw, and exams admissions disrupted. And India is, I guess, the second in the foreign education, sending children to foreign countries. There's going to be a dip in this because of all the travel bans and stuff. The saddest scenario, I would say here, more than the urban sector, is in the rural area, which is no school, no midday meal, no income for parents, no food to eat. They can't go out and play. And these are children who don't have TVs or maybe laptops or gaming devices to entertain themselves. They can't go out and play with friends. And worst is there are no alcohol shops. So the sad part is domestic violence is increased. Can I go on to the next slide? So this is the strategy that there has to be a massive overhaul, e-learning from teachers, students, and administrators who will enable these things. And there's some opportunity for startups and MSME, the Baiju and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I would say that the challenges are with respect to connectivity, how many have internet, what is the bandwidth, and who has laptop accessibility, desktop, tablets or mobile phones, smartphones and stuff. And of course, the capacity building, or who all have to learn these skills. And all this is not, you can't totally blend into online learning because certain things like medical engineering cannot be really taught without practicals and lab based workshops and stuff. And the elephant in the room here is not, we are addressing the affluent sectors with the urban area, but the elephant in the room is basically rural. Okay? So let's move on to the next slide, please. So I'm going to talk basically about banking sector. And banking sector, I would say, is basically, in principle, the second time that these things happen. It actually impacts the corporates and it impacts the households first and then the banking. But banking is instrumental in the way it affects all these sectors. And most countries, I guess, it would be instrumental in the growth revival. But sadly speaking, in our country, we have rogered the banking sector so badly. It's like the taxpayer, So, but we will bounce back, whatever is the number of hits that we will keep on taking the hits. Can I go to the next slide? So very, very briefly into the backdrop. And banking sector has been hit so many ways from 2016 with demonetization, GST, and a massive cleanup operations. And the positive is NPA did decline a bit, but then you had debacle after debacle. And which is good for the consumer is deposit insurance has increased. But yeah, banks are going to have a problem. Next slide, please. And the worst part is Moody has degraded the banking system to a negative. Next slide. So these are the challenges that COVID has imposed on us. And it's simultaneously with plunge in oil prices and the global slowdown, synchronized, or rather I would say domestic slowdown synchronized with the global slowdown, and leadership issues everywhere. Moratorium has been announced everywhere. More companies are going to seek this. And yeah, there is a spike in NPAs, and I guess it will keep increasing more and more. Can we go on to the next slide? No, the previous. relaxation measures basically, yeah, no, ahead. Go ahead. Yes. So relaxation measures basically have been in two phases, and we have had all these kind of quantitative easing that is they have been trying to do this. Now our focus is basically on fiscal stimulus packages, and it has to be noted here that this moratorium is basically on working capital, and finance companies don't have the concept of working capital. And can I have the next slide? Yeah, these are the opportunities that are available. Yes, again, just as in education sector, here also we have digitalizing, and everything is going to be technology. We have to take care on tightening security and privacy and customer trust. And I would like to mention here basically about the small finance banks and payment banks that are playing a major role here. And the biggest opportunity is for the fintech companies like Paytm and etc. These have, shall I say, several modes in which they can go: social media, and they can go on to mobile phones, and they can be an add-on to banking sector, or maybe they would replace if banking sector is not able to rise up to this occasion here. And can I go to the next slide? Yeah, here I need to basically talk on this point, which is fix ailing sectors. So if the government again here says about, let's say it says to the banks that please do not convert these bad loans as delinquent loans, then the already weak bank will be aiding the weak firm, and it becomes counterproductive in the sense they will not fund the strong firms, and then strong firms don't get funds. And these are certain things, policy steps that have to be taken. And the focus here is to generate domestic saving and investment. See, foreign remittances are coming in a way, though it has dipped, but it is coming because the rupee rate has fallen down. And that way, the foreign remittances are there. But the local cash inflows, because of the migrant workers' disruption, has actually come down. And here I would like to mention that the MFIs have not been actually included in this moratorium. As we speak today, the SBI is meeting to discuss on this issue. And the sad part is, can I have the next slide? The sad part here is MFIs have extended the, what shall I say, the moratorium to the borrowers, but they have not been given. It's been left to the discretion of the banks. And requests from industry, from FICCI and all these agencies are, please allow restructuring NBFC loans, and please do not downgrade to the rating agencies, help us that way. And next slide. I'm just keeping track of the time. How much more time do I have? 8 minutes. Okay, fine. Previous slide, please. Yeah. So here, basically, I want to emphasize on the role of India's fintech market, where they can penetrate into all sectors. And we have a variation in which it can be done. And a laudable effort is the India Post, that has already delivered about 400 plus crores of cash to the doorstep of at each and every villager. Whether he has an account or whether he doesn't have an account, they are able to do that. So they have aided the banking sector so well. So as I conclude, I would like to say a few words about how best we can, what are the things that we can expect from banks now. Is basically, I guess we would see operating profits of banks, yes, are plummeting. The interest income is going to take a hit. And the banks, I guess they will increase their locker rents, their service charges, transaction charges, penal charges, everything. But we need to make use of any dormant accounts that we have, and the Jan Dhan accounts, because any government grant or any subsidies, everything are going to come through the bank accounts. And the biggest positive impact is the digital impact, and banks have to gear up to do this. Maybe take care of their employees, give them some support plan model for remote working, and take care of the morale of the employees, and also please take care of the customers. So I will end it here, and I guess we can talk more about it after during the discussion. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Is it clear now?
Yeah. You're audible and visible. Please start.
Okay. So once again, very good morning to my dear friends. Thank you, Deshpande sir, for inviting me for this very important panel discussion on a very important subject. And hello once again to my two dear old friends, Radhika and Surya. Now, Ashmat, I would be going a little fast because I've got too many slides. I'll be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on entrepreneurship, especially because the pandemic has really affected the sector very badly. And every day when we sit in Vidarbha Industry Association, we keep on discussing how to get out of this problem. Now, the first problem is there is a large scale shrinkage in the 8 core industries by about 6.3% in March due to dip in production of crude oil, natural gas, fertilizer, steel, cement, etc. The automobile industry has taken a big hit because there is a loss of around rupees 1 lakh crore in 45 days. There is shutdown, zero production, and the GST collection has got down very badly. And the loss by GST is around 28,000 crores. The inventories are piling up. The automobile industry actually accounts for about 15% of the GST collection of central government, and the new vehicle registration accounts for about 5 to 7% of the state tax collection. All these has impacted the ancillary MSME industry, which is reeling under debt, lack of orders, unpaid workers, payments stuck up with automobile giants. The FMGC industry's growth has also come down from 9 to 10% to about 5 to 6%. And as per the report of the market research firm Nielsen's, there is a downsizing of staff, layoff, salary cuts across level ranging from 15 to 50%, even in big industries like Tata, Reliance, etc. Even Government of India is undertaking like Bharat Coking Coal Limited are unable to pay the salary for their 42,000 staff. Next. Millions of daily wage earners have lost their solitary source of income, as many of them have lost their jobs. About 47% of the small business are likely to shut up due to this pandemic. As you all know, thousands of migrant workers have gone back to their villages, and there is a very big doubt whether they will come back once the industry gets started. There was a heavy dependence on China for component supply, especially in the automobile sector, which has been badly affected, which has badly affected the business, especially when the Wuhan problem came up in the month of November. After that, the Chinese government stopped the supplies, and from November onwards, this problem has come up. Now, there is a fear among the industry that the exports may get routed to China if the full-fledged production does not start immediately. Many industries may not be able to comply with the government's new guidelines post-COVID-19 due to the additional financial burden. Like now, if you want to start the industry, there are many guidelines issued by the government which has to be followed. Otherwise, they are not allowed to open. Many of the micro units in the unorganized sectors have faced closure as there is a neglect from the government guidelines. They fall in a place where the government guideline doesn't cover them. So there is no certainty whether they are allowed to open, not allowed to open, or what their future is. Productions have shut down, and this has a cascading impact on the global slowdown in demand and lowered demand consumption of non-essential items. There is an overall slowdown to liquidity constraints, plunging general sentiments and purchasing capacity. This will have a cascading effect across value chain. The industries that is most affected by the COVID-19 is the job market, retail, travel and tourism, hospitality, local transport, that is Ola and Uber, real estate, entertainment, construction, luxury products, etc. Next. Now, when we have this discussion, mostly when we are in BIA, these are the suggestions we have been giving to the government, and even similar suggestions have been given by CII and FICCI also. We feel that India's greatest asset is our demographic divide. 54% of our population is below 30 years of age. Government should replicate China's 1980s model by promoting entrepreneurship and innovation among the 600 million young population. The government should intensify the Make in India initiative by partnership with the state government so that our supply chain can wean away from the imports from China. We should re-evaluate the SEZ policy to boost competitiveness and stimulate growth in manufacturing and service sector. India ranks 63rd in the ease of doing business policy, and we need to maintain this position by addressing the roadblocks in business so that we are able to attract more investments. After the COVID-19 pandemic, many countries wants to pull out of China. This is the right time for the government to make India an attractive investment destination. Government must encourage lateral talent. Government must encourage lateral talent from industry and private sector. So as a part of the decision-making process, as these are the people who really understand the innovation-fueled world. Strengthen our technology so that no new pandemic can overwhelm us. We need to scale up our skills and speed so that we can raise China as a dominant GSC player. Government has, as Surya has already mentioned, government has already extended moratorium period. Previous. Government has already extended moratorium period for loan repayment by 3 months and cut the repo rate. As a last resort, money can be printed. This is what some of the economists have suggested. Probably Deshpande sir can throw some light on this. In fact, these economists, they suggest that, in 2008, when there was a recession, countries like USA, Japan, Indonesia, Turkey and all, they resorted to this measure to come out of recession. Now here printing money doesn't mean actually printing money. This means the central bank buying the debts and the security of the government as well as the private sector so that more money flows into the economy and then the economy can come out of the recession. But here one problem that may come up is the fear of inflation. Sir, probably after the end of the discussion, probably you can throw some light on this suggestion by the economist.
Sure.
Now, some steps which government has already taken is that, the government is likely to suspend GST payment for a period of 6 months. And the rate cut for specific sector, there will be rate cut for specific sector. Presently, GST has to be paid the moment the invoice is raised. So what happens is, the entrepreneur gets a big burden on himself because the moment the invoice is raised, you have to pay the GST to the government, and the actual realization may come after 30 days, 60 days or 90 days. Now, when the government is doing all these things for the entrepreneur, the stimulus package is there for the entrepreneur, there are some aspects which the entrepreneur also has to take care of. Now, these are some of the things which I feel the entrepreneur needs to do. Shift towards localization. We are in many of the industries, we find that, there is a dependence on the outside source, especially for the supply chain. But now the time has come, this pandemic has taught us that, we have to be more localized. The second part is a digital push. The more the technology gets introduced in the industry, the more the industry can flourish. The entrepreneur must understand that cash is king for the business. The entrepreneur must try to move towards variable cost model rather than the fixed cost model. Here, the latest concept of the gig economy can come into play, because a gig economy is an economy where you tend to save a lot of cost because of the variable nature of the cost. You have to understand that the supply chain resilience is the key. That is the most important thing you have to focus on. Otherwise, during a pandemic like this, you land into trouble. You have to build in agility. Next slide, please. Accept that it is a previous. Accept that the survival of the quickest and not the fittest. You have to be very, very adaptable if you want to survive in such a situation. The entrepreneur needs to look at adversity as the opportunity. They should try to add value to life, business, and to the society. The entrepreneur must reinvent their business by accepting that post-corona world is going to be very different from the pre-corona world. This is a fact which all of us have to accept. Next slide, please. Now here is a positive for all the entrepreneurs. Be confident that India is a country of Jugaad, management skill, Juban, communication skill, and Junoon, passion. So no virus, be it Corona, Nipah or SARS, can keep us down for long. Next. Now here I have mentioned a quote by Swami Vivekananda, which he said about 150 years back. Stand up, be bold, be strong, take the whole responsibility on your shoulder, and know that you are the creator of your own destiny. Probably he was not aware that the statement is going to hold true for the entrepreneurs, but I think this is a very apt code which all the entrepreneurs must follow.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there's one more. Yeah.
Thank you. I have.
And moving further, since we have 2-3 more minutes to add, I would request Professor Bhave sir is with us, and Professor Chava sir is with us, and of course Deshmukh sir is with us. So we would really like to hear from you for like 1 or 2 minutes, your comments and your points that you would like to bring into highlight. So we start with any one of us. So Bhave sir, would you like to start? So just comment your comments on it. Just a moment. Let me unmute you. Let me unmute you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I am highly thankful to respected Deshpande sir, who has informed me yesterday that tomorrow we are going to have this kind of a discussion sort of a thing wherein we all can express our perceptions about the situation, extraordinary situation we all are going through. First of all, this situation is it is like this kind of situation can never come again. It is a very exclusive and very extraordinary situation. Therefore, trying to compare it with some other events like we have faced in Kerala there was flood, there was recession during 2008-9 because of that US home loan bubble and all that. So all these things have happened. But all these things have never made the whole world to stop. This is for the first time, even during the war time. I was very young during 1972 war, 71, 72 war. But I still remember the things were not like this. It is like, the machine which should run throughout has been suddenly stopped. And we are expecting that all parts of the machine should be intact. So there will be some kind of a problem. It is as if I remember a story from my school time that when an elephant enters into the village of blind people, then every blind person who touches the elephant feels that elephant is like that. For example, if he feels his feet, then he thinks that it is like a pole. If he touches the back of the elephant, then it is like a large, huge wall. So that way, everybody is expressing. The thing is this, that if we want to, make up for this economy, then number one, sincerity and integrity of the government should be in place. Irrespective of whether the government is central government, state government, local body, municipality, because this is the network which is going to, help all of us and which is going to make all of us comfortable even during this difficult time. Therefore, the integrity and the intentions of these things should be supported by people. Till date, the things are going on very, very fine. Now the things will come before us because the huge unemployment has already been triggered. Huge the schedules have really gone with the wind, I may say, because nobody is able to follow any schedule because nothing can be scheduled as on date. So in such a condition, we should try to see to it that from wherever we can have, we should be able to distribute the resources in an equitable way, at least to make the lowest person in the society to survive. The kind of hygiene we are propagating, the kind of life we are propagating, the kind of habits and behaviors we are propagating, these are all not applicable to 70 to 75% or even 80% of the people. They have to just survive. We have to just protect them from getting infected, because if one person gets infected, then the things will remain in the world. Now, whether some kind of medical solution will come to it, whether some kind of social solution will come to it, come to solve this problem, all these things are, in the future, and nobody can predict the future except economists, what I can say. And so the economists have really expressed the kind of things they can. And I think that at the end of the day, there should be production, the person should be productively employed, and the third thing is this, that there should be sincere and honest efforts not only from the government or from the people who are governing, but from the society itself, society also, various social groups, various units. Like my university, I treat it as a unit. It can become a COVID sensitization center. So we can make the university COVID sensitization center, wherein people from various walks of life, like people from literature, will help people to come out of stress. People from economics will tell people how to combat with such situation, how to manage your finances. And people from business management or other disciplines, everybody will have its say. So we should, get into it rather than isolating us. The distancing is physical distancing. The word which we are using, like social distancing should not be there as if as on date we all are meeting. We all are near to each other. We are sitting at a physical distance, but we all are understanding each other's opinion. So I think if everybody comes out, then certainly the economy has taken a back seat. The opportunities have gone. People are going to lose jobs. There may be a rise in crime. There may be a rise in, we are able to control crime as on date because there is total curfew. Once the curfew is lifted, then these 50, 60%, I'm finishing in a second. Then these 60, 70% people, we should see to it that they should not get converted into criminals. So thank you very much for inviting me and listening.
Thank you so much, sir. Yeah, thank you so much. Bhavi sir, I hope you are audible now. Your concise comments on whatever has been discussed till now.
Rightly said by Dr. Deshpande that it is the health doctor and also it is the economist as a doctor. Now they have a major role to play. And the haves must take care of the have-nots, as said by Dr. Deshmukh. And apart from leaving it to the government, apart from that, the people must come up, the society must come up to help itself or to help themselves. Thank you.
Okay, that was really articulating, sir. Chava sir, you're with us, I hope?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Your concise comments on whatever has been discussed, would like to hear from you.
Good morning to all the board friends. I have only 2 comments to make. India has unlimited labor employable. So, but at the same time, now we are finding the restraint of restricted movement of human capital within India and also outside India. So we should carve out a simulative model whereby we can maximize the output of this labor locally. I want Dr. Anita's comments on that. That's number 1. Number 2 is time to go for localized cottage industries and 100% digitalization. Can we ask Dr. Surya's comments on this?
Sure, sir. Noted. I hope they have also noted the same. Deshpande sir, I would just like to ask how we go about this. We are at 11:14. So I think we can spend the next 5 to 7 minutes over more modes of discussion.
Now, whatever the questions are there, let us clarify those first, and then we'll summarize.
Okay, that's better. So I'll just
take all those questions first.
Yes, sure. So
and after Asmat, after narrating the question, you should ask who is going to answer that question.
Yes, for sure. Okay. So there have been a large number of lists. We have also got some pre-submitted questions, and one of the very common questions we cater is to the career and job or the employment opportunities. And largely, the students have been there. So this question is about what the prospective career opportunities and whatever has been the impact on it. Plus, I would like to add that there is one more question about what are the major changes that need to be implemented in the economic liberalization policies. Basically, what policy changes are required because we have gone through this so as to prevent ourselves more. And I would like Deshpande sir's comment on that. That has been a question directed to you, sir.
Okay. So about career, I think Surya would be able to
Yeah.
explain it in a better manner. I'll just straight away go to the question relating to the policy changes and the problems relating to it. See, in my introductory remarks also, I pointed out one thing you have to remember, that there are certain services which we consider as the government services, defense, then health services, telecommunication, financial services, water, electricity. They are all functioning, and their contribution is about 20%. Farming sector contributes about 15%. So we can safely say that 35% of the economy is functioning. Rest of the economy, that is 65%, coming to halt. And therefore, the concrete policy framework needs to be met for this 65% of the economy. Now, what kind of changes can be introduced and what is actually happening? See, one thing is certain, and Anita also talked about that MSME, as I said, is going to be badly affected. So something needs to be done as early as possible relating to some package needs to be announced for MSME. Another important problem which is going to crop up is about the corporate tax, which is going down, and government, which is normally getting revenue around 20 lakh crore in the form of revenue, and that revenue is going to suffer to the extent of 5 lakh to 10 lakh crores, and therefore that is to be compensated. Now, what kind of policy setup we announce so that these problems can be overcome to some extent? The first and the foremost thing would be how to reduce the expenditure and how to prioritize government expenditure. So first, those priorities need to be set up by the government, and whatever is urgent, that needs to be taken care of first, and then subsequently, once the economy gets revived, then additional expenses on other priority areas can be met. And therefore, my humble suggestion first would be that setting priority should be the agenda of the government. Another important point which was made by Anita, that there will be printing of currency and monetization of certain currencies. Of course, that would be the choice which is available with the government now because of lack of enough tax, and the corporate tax is also going down. And therefore, there is a inflation risk because there is supply shock, and at the same time, there is increase in money supply. So otherwise also, I expect that there will be some degree of inflation. The another important point is, even if there is inflation, let it be for a certain period of time, and fiscal deficit may also go up, but this is the kind of situation where you can have injection of money to some extent. But of course, we have to see that debt burden should not cross beyond a certain limit, and there is a possibility that some new areas like corporate bonds can be purchased by RBI, which is not allowed at the moment. But because it's a situation of crisis, some kind of changes can be brought relating to the corporate bonds, or some bonds can be floated as suggested by Dr. Sherry Chava in some forum, that you can have the bonds relating to this COVID and relating to this particular pandemic, and let people and the corporate sector provide money in the form of that bond, and that money can be utilized. That can be the another policy setup relating to covering up and restabilizing the economy. But the point needs to be remembered, and as Radhika and Surya also talked about it, but Radhika's concern is about how to improve the exports and how to improve the international trade. The experience so far is it becomes difficult to take the space of China's exports, because there are other countries also which are already in queue, and therefore there is a possibility that these countries may take space before India, and that is what is happening. Like you find the many countries where they are already in rest. Japan is one of the important countries where they are trying to pick up, and therefore these are the changes which are going to occur. But the inflation rate is bound to increase, but in spite of that, the policy which would be required is to have the supply of money, and even if there is deficit, that deficit can go up, but of course the debt burden should not cross beyond a certain limit. It is going to be the big challenge about how to balance in terms of revenue and expenditure. Excise duties and all that, they are going down because petrol and petroleum products demand is not picking up. Even in places like Nagpur, you find that petrol pumps, they are not getting demand, and therefore that amount of duties are also going to reduce. So these are certain issues of concern, but priorities, setting priorities will be the major issue. I think I should stop here, and later on I will supplement with certain answers. Okay, thank you.
That was a very informative answer, sir. Thank you so much. There are questions. There are actually many questions. So let's see how many we can cater to. Surya ma'am, there is a
Yes,
question
yeah.
for you. It's for Surya ma'am, and then we'll
Yeah.
start with the question is regarding a lot of questions highlighting that what the impact has been on the employment opportunities and what is the way ahead to it. And I'll just add one more question to it, that the role of maritime sector in the revival of economy post-COVID and what the impact has been on the maritime sector.
Yeah, fine. So can you all hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead with in the order. First, Dr. Deshmukh, you were talking about integrity and accountability. I think I should emphasize that with respect to the banking sector also, that we need to upscale the transparency, accountability, and
Yeah,
very
yeah.
different kind
Lot
of
of issues. Yes.
financial reporting has to take about a very drastic change.
Perfect.
And that is second point is about Dr. Chava. He was asking me about localized industry. That is very well said. In like I always see, so not just because I'm prejudiced or something, that I did work on women empowerment, but I think the self-help groups, women entrepreneurs, e-retail marketing, and rural sector will give the push, just as households will give the push and stimulus unknowingly in India. And we have always seen agriculture as the backbone of the country. And quietly, I think that will start building up the confidence to industry. So localized industry is the correct thing, where it may start at the rural area with maybe women entrepreneurs and the MFIs and the small payment banks that could start the revival. And Dr. Deshpande, sir, you were talking about bonds. So yes, it's a very good suggestion. This UN bonds were there. Apparently, even during the Ebola and SARS, this UN bonds did not. People were not able to avail those money, buy or sell those bonds. It took them almost a year. So sometimes bonds do work. I'm not disagreeing with your point. It's a very good point, but let us see how it goes. I just wanted to add.
Some institutional framework needs to be provided, and
Yes.
that can be provided with the help of the monetary authority. Then
Correct.
only there will be some degree of credibility, and people will start probably investing in that.
Correct. I was just adding to this about COVID bonds you were saying. So I was just saying that this is what is the case that happened with UN bonds. And I'll come to the employability last. I'll just talk about marine sector and then link it with the employability. So marine sector also, like banking sector or many sectors in our country, marine sector was also not doing very well. But in IMU, we have a course on logistics, basically, and port management. So this is the trigger for revival. See, right now we see so much of a breakdown in the supply chain. So I think marine sector will be instrumental in bringing about this growth. Although the oil prices are very low, yet I hope the marine sector will be very instrumental in transporting essential commodities, medicines especially. Okay, so that way I think marine sector will play a strategic role in the revival of the economy. And going on to the last point, which was raised to me directly, is about employability. So first and foremost, yes, we have a problem. I would request students not to be worried or panic, but I know you will be, because it sounds very cliched if I say that. And but MBAs, you don't have any problem. MBAs are the all-time heroes all the time. You always can push yourself somewhere. That is the beauty of an MBA. And at that, having said that, I would say that
Sorry,
साहब के
sorry.
लड़के को गिरफ्तार
Please
किया।
unmute you. Please mute yourselves, other people. I request you,
पता
please
नहीं
mute yourself.
Okay.
Please mute your audio. Please, ma'am, continue.
Having said that, I would say that employability, I think the sectors that really have a lot of scope right away is health industry, pharmaceutical industry, and the entrepreneurship is very good. And employability in the banking is also good, and IT will never ever die down. So you can look at those sectors. And even if it's going to take time, I don't want any of the students to lose their confidence. Upskill yourself, because now is the time for digitalization. Wherever you feel there are gaps, plug the gaps now, because you can't go anywhere, can't do anything. Instead of putting yourself down, please upskill yourself wherever you can and enable yourself digitally into IT, financial accounting practices. All these things are going to take on a new normal now. So I would say not to be worried, but always be on track. You have a lot of scope in many sectors. Retail has scope, supply chain management has scope, banking has scope, finance has scope. These are the sectors that are going to pick up fast. And next will be manufacturing. It may take some time, which none of us from here can say. But during this time, please use it productively and upskill yourself wherever possible. Okay. Next question to anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Surya, you spoke about the revival of the economy by women entrepreneurs and the self-help group, which is very rightly pointed out, because now the time has come when it is the rural economy, it is the small entrepreneurs who are going to push up the economy from this pandemic.
Correct.
The second part is, as you know, there has been a lot of job losses all around. Most of the companies, they are laying off employees, and a lot of people have lost their jobs. And this is the time when the concept of forced entrepreneurship is going to come up. Like, many people are going to come into entrepreneurship not because they have the talent or they have the dream to become entrepreneurs, but they are going to become entrepreneurs because getting jobs are going to be very difficult. So, this is one concept which is coming up now. Let us see how it works out, because eventually, it will not be possible for everybody to succeed.
Here, I would like to bring in Dr. Raghuram Rajan's statement of India reforms only in crisis. And history shows that we have reformed whenever there is a crisis. Liberalization happened, and all these big changes have happened when there is a crisis, and we actually bite the bullet, I would say, and we actually bounce back very well. I think India is synonymous with the taxpayer, and I think we will bounce back.
Okay, that is a very good point. Okay, moving towards Radhika, ma'am, there are a lot of questions on India's and the international trade and all that is happening. So I'll just summarize the questions. The major questions are about what do you think of the transformation in international trade post-COVID, and especially with many countries, contemplating the dropping trade deals with China. And also you have this, what is going to be the relationship between India and USA when USA is re-strategizing relations in favor of Pakistan. All in all, we want to know, where does India stand right now and what is the way ahead, and your comments on it.
Okay, Radhika, basically they're asking, is it from Indo-Pakistan cricket match? We are moving on to Indo-China cricket match.
Okay, so see, basically, I look. Thank you, Surya. So I looked at some of the questions on the chat box and some of the questions that were sent across yesterday itself. So during the course of my presentation, I did think that I spoke about some of these issues. First of all, and even Dr. Deshpande mentioned about it. So just as India is making all kinds of strategies to lure investors into India, the same way the Chinese are also ensuring that the investors remain there. So that is one point. We also have competition from other countries. Like, say, for example, in the ready-made garment sector, Bangladesh is producing some, about 80% of their exports is the ready-made garments. And that particular sector was exempt right from the beginning from the lockdown, which means that there has been production as compared to us. So we are already on a back foot as far as production is concerned. The other thing that comes to my mind, the worry that comes to my mind is that just now Surya mentioned about the 1991 crisis. So when that crisis took place, a lot of investment went away from India and it went to the newly market oriented countries which are in the Eastern European region. But very soon they came back from there back to India because they found that in those countries the infrastructure was not adequate. Now my fear is that if we do not like pull up our socks, then the same thing could happen. Initially we could have it going good, where there could be movement from China to here, but after some time, if we do not, I mean, that was actually my last slide also, that if we take care of our SDGs, so if we take care of those, definitely there will be, an improvement. So the state government capital, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Uh,
I think
I just want to ask Radhika one question.
sure, ma'am.
Radhika, you spoke about the government doubling the land pool so as to attract business to India. Can you throw some more light on that? Because so far I have not come across any such thing.
Okay, this is just yesterday's news from whatever I understand. There are some 4 states which are trying to do this. That is Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, and 2 other states. I have it
Punjab
noted
is there.
somewhere.
Punjab.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's Punjab. So therefore, in these states, some 1 lakh odd acres of land is being made available for industries which are, moving from, say, China to come into India. So, because as I said during the course of my presentation, one of the biggest impediments to FDI coming in is this land. So what they're trying to do is trying to ensure that land is available and these people, that means the FDI, do not run away just because land is not available, especially for, new investments, the greenfield investments.
What you're saying is, Radhika, more than the land issue, I feel that it is the lack of infrastructure which is really taking away the FDIs from India.
Absolutely. I did mention that also. That's why I said this SDGs, like if you look at the 17 SDGs, some of them are physical, some of them are natural, some of them are social, some of them are human. So unless you build the physical infrastructure, that means, so if you don't concentrate on that, there is going to be some difficulty for us. But the particular states that are attracting any kind of enquiries right now are the states where there is already some amount of infrastructure, like say Andhra Pradesh, Delhi, Mumbai, Maharashtra, so on and so forth.
Okay. Anita ma'am, there's a question for you. So, the people are asking what do you think microfinance sector, which is largely unorganized, will it help recover economy from the current state? Given the prevalent measure of lockdown, which compels the human capital to stay put, what is the panel's take, and your take first, on the importance of labor as emphasized by Karl Marx? Also, wouldn't that paradoxically compel economies and industries to move towards automation?
Replying to the first part of the question, I fully agree that the micro enterprise is going to revive the economy to a large extent because, recently I read somewhere that, micro enterprises like the InstaMojo, Razor Play, they have a growth of about 20-25%. People are getting more and more into the digital payment mode. In fact, now you will know that, even the Nukkad ka jo kirana ka dukaan hai, they also, take payments by a digital mode. So slowly this microfinance, they are definitely going to be the sector which is going to revive the economy. Coming to the second part of the question regarding the labor issues. See, the thing is, even otherwise, apart from the COVID lockdown and the migrant laborers going back to the states, and there is no guarantee that they're going to come back and all that. For the last couple of years, there has been a great emphasis on the concept of artificial intelligence and on machine learning, robotics, and all that. So, even before this pandemic happened, a lot of industries in the manufacturing sectors, they have gone for the artificial intelligence and all that, because, labor has been a problem all through in our country in almost all the states. Even in Maharashtra, in Vidarbha, if you see, it is extremely difficult to make the laborers work because, they don't have that mentality of working hard and giving their best to the company. So eventually what happens is, we have to depend upon the migrant laborers. And, in this pandemic, we have just realized that how much we are dependent on them. Recently, one of my relatives in Kerala was telling me that Kerala government, in Kerala, labor is a big, big issue because, because of the communism there, communist government, labor is a big problem there. And they are totally dependent on the migrant laborers from Bengal and Bihar. Now, what has happened is, during this pandemic, the government was desperate to hold them back and did every possible thing to pamper them, like giving them the best food, the best accommodation, entertainment for them. They would recharge the mobile for the laborers, and they were given chess boards and carom boards to play and keep themselves occupied. It came to such an extent that the government issued a guidelines that these migrant laborers will not be called migrant laborers, but they have to be addressed as the guest laborers, so that they don't feel. Now, can you imagine the extent to which the government is going for this? Because this has been a big problem in our country. So, this labor issue is going to be there in the future, and with so much of automation coming in, companies are definitely going to start automation, and in the days to come, you will find that companies will take a stand, they will be less and less dependent on the labor.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. So I have 2-3 questions more. There's been a large number of questions, but we unfortunately, I'm trying to just summarize and cater as much as I can. Deshmukh, so you want to say something?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, please.
One thing, everybody is speaking from the point of view of, production, engagement of labor, engagement of capital, engagement of resources. But nobody is speaking that from the point of view of consumption, from the point of view of creating the demand. Everybody is assuming that demand is there and production will solve the problem. The production will ultimately should be consumed. It should be value added, and value addition will go to in the coffers of the people. So which areas production should be, because the priorities of people, the buying behavior of people is going to change, because the impact is such that people are going to get away with the luxuries and all that, those things. So you have to plan the production as in congruence with consumption pattern expected. So someone should study about the changes in the buying behavior, and accordingly the production should be linked to it. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, that's a very good point, sir. So I have 2-3 questions to float to the panelist members. So whoever wishes to take it up first, they can. And it would be good if all of them could give their concise comments on it. So there's the questions go like this: that as global oil prices are expected to fall and has fallen, then the rationale behind increasing the fuel excise instead of decreasing it. So what is the rationale behind increasing the fuel excise instead of decreasing it, even when the global oil prices are expected to fall? Another one is that, is it possible for India's economic growth to fall down to zero? It was earlier projected by McKinsey to be at 0.02%. And how the stock market is behaving like, and what are basically, what are the factors which help the stock market to gain the stock? What is going to happen with the current scenario already in? So the 3 questions. So anybody would like to start with this?
I'll take the first question with respect to the oil's prices and why the excise is, why are the oil prices in India so high? This is a very old question. It has been happening, and it is not related to the global oil price at all. It's related to the loans that we have, and the previous 10, 12 previous governments have shifted the debts, or they have not paid the oil sector companies, and they've created this entire debt, restructured it as oil bonds. So the present government has been only involved in paying back the interest on the loan, and the loan, which is I think 10,000 lakh crores, if I'm not very sure the number. But that is why, even though global oil prices are low, we are not able to, because we are all now sitting and paying back a loan that was created earlier.
Why that loan was taken?
because we did not pay back. The government
No,
did
no.
not pay back.
Why that loan was taken by the
No,
government?
it was not a loan. It was
Ah.
unpaid debts to the oil
Why,
sector.
why that those dates have happened? Means why government has become a creditor?
Yeah,
to
government to government did not pay their bills to the oil sector.
No, why for? What was the
Why,
economic
I
cause?
don't want to get into that.
The economic cause is
Yeah.
the economic cause in order to maintain the fuel prices at a lower level when the global prices were
Yeah.
high.
Yeah,
That
I
is
didn't
why it
want to
has
say
been
that
created.
because that's why I just said previous government and present government. I don't
But
want
the
it
cost
to
should be
Yeah.
taken into consideration.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So other people's comment, Radhika ma'am, Anita ma'am, Deshpande sir.
About stock market, I will just make a quick comment. Like
Yeah.
stock market, you find ultimately has a link with what is happening in the financial sector, particularly banking sector of the economy. So normally it is observed that whenever you find that rate of interest goes down, and that is how you are observing. So people move to the stock exchange, and therefore you find that stock market is rising, and there is expectation naturally that at this moment, because the share prices are at the lower level, people trying to procure that shares at this lowest prices with the expectation that in the coming future these prices will go up, and that is how it works. And therefore you find that there is some recovery or some kind of increase in the share prices. The another important point which was made, that is it really possible for India's economy to fall down to zero? I think that at the moment the rate of growth is about 2%, 3%,
2%.
which is slightly higher than the other countries' rate of growth. So it may not go down to such a lower level because of the higher population. And as Dr. Deshmukh was pointing out, that this consumption level we have succeeded in maintaining at that particular rate is because there is some demand which is generating from certain sections of society, and that is helping the economy to maintain that particular rate of growth. The question which I can see, that education institutes, whatever are functioning, is it possible for them to have lower down the fees structure and other? That is, I think, the area of concern for students. I feel that when we talk about the fee structure, there are different components, and there we can think about that in order to survive certain education institutes, especially the private education institutes as well as the government institutes, we can take the help of the corporate sector. And as you have corporate sector responsibility, social responsibility, that fund can be channelized for maintaining the institutes in near.
That fund has many takers, sir.
And that is how at least at the some level, if we can do that, otherwise it would be difficult to lower down the fees, because infrastructure developed by these education institutes is so high that it becomes difficult now to lower down the fees with quality of education. So we have to find out the channels with the help of which we can think about making the level of revenue and expenditure balance. This is what I feel as far as these two questions are concerned.
Okay, Ashmat, rather than, because all the questions have been answered, I thought that before we leave this forum, because we are three women here who are part of the panelists, we must bring out one very important aspect of the COVID-19, and that is the gender-related issues, or rather the women-related issues therein. So there were a lot of my students who were asking me these questions, and therefore I thought I would use this forum to answer this. That during this COVID-19, see, as it is prior to the COVID-19, it was found, I mean, the statistics show that women were doing 10 times, repeat, 10 times more amount of work in time measure as compared to the men, the work that men were doing. And therefore, it is very, very likely, and this is a very serious issue, that the unpaid care work, I mean like cooking, cleaning, care for the children, care of the elderly, unpaid domestic work, all such kind of things, definitely there's going to be an increase in it. And so for those of y'all who would like to do some research maybe in this area, this is definitely one area that you could take up. The other aspect is the unpaid economic work that will also increase. The unpaid economic work is where the women participate in the economic activity itself. That means there could be a entrepreneur, the husband or the family could have an enterprise, and you as the woman is participating in it. And but that participation is just seen as an extension of your the role in the house as a housewife. And if the man had to work, that would be treated as work, and in the census it's not recorded. So these are definitely issues that we also must raise when we are talking about the COVID-19. I'd like to conclude by thanking everyone who has made it possible for me to come to this forum and has invited me. Thank you again.
There's an unending list of questions and
Ashwat, can I just
confused.
butt in 1 minute? Ashwat?
Yes, ma'am. Just a moment.
Yeah.
Just a moment. I would like to frame a new question because I would like you to just answer. Then you can add your comments on the previous one also.
Yeah.
So there is this point. Deshmukh sir just commented about the consumption levels. So, but someone is asking that can a direct transfer to these people help tackle fall in consumption levels? That's one thing. And the other question which comes is like, do you think that agriculture has the potential to become the vital sector in providing employment to millions of migrant laborers closer to their natives? Because in this, era which we are going through right now. So these 2 points.
They have migrated from agriculture only.
Yeah, but
They have
right now
migrated from agriculture only.
They had migrated thinking that they will have a better life in city. Now they have realized that is good for them.
Okay. So do you think that it will become a vital sector for them now? Do you think they'll realize it enough?
They can either work in agriculture or where they were working just now. They can work at one place only, no?
Okay. Yeah. So Anita, Anita ma'am and Surya ma'am, you comment on also the consumption level wala point, which someone is asking.
The consumption level, the thing is, definitely the consumption is going to be focused more on the essential items, and definitely the non-essentials are going to go down. So, this has to be really studied in the prepared form, maybe do some research on the subject, and then take up the production accordingly. Because now maybe the luxury goods, the non-essential things, they are going to be neglected by the people, because now we have come to realize that it is only the essential things of life which really matters to us. The last 1.5 months when we have sat at home without any exposure to the outside world, we have realized that buying too many pairs of footwear or going to the mall are irrelevant things of life. So now
very
the
good,
focus is going to be on the essentials.
Very good.
That's a very valid point. Surya ma'am, your comments, please.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add on this topic. Enough has been said.
Okay.
I just wanted to raise, I saw a question on the chat about role of CAs and chartered accountants.
CA and CS,
Yeah. So I just want to answer this, that all the more in banking sector and everywhere else, the transparency, accountability is even more high now in these troubled times. And I think the credibility of these institutions is basically dependent on the CAs and CPAs or ACS or whoever, whatever, all those audit courses that people are studying and practicing. So all the more credibility is very much important now.
Okay. So I think, yes, sir.
Yes, we are referring to banking and financial sector every now and then. And in our country, these are the sectors which have suffered consistently for more than 5, 6, 7 years. The credibility of banking sector is going down. The credibility of the customer to whom the loans are provided is going down. Private banks are really, they are just, they're going with the wind, and everything happens to be hypothetical. And when the banking sector is in such a bad shape that we are unable to install the credibility, then there is a serious issue of governance of banking and financial sector through the agencies like RBI or SEBI or whatever it is. So when the figures are faulty, when the figures are false, when the figures are not favoring us, another 2008 Satyam scam. This Satyam scam is going to happen in a rampant way. It is going to spread like COVID. And these are the results. The banking and financial sector is totally, I can use the word unbelievable, or they have lost the sheen of their credibility. Sure.
So
Yeah.
all the more, it's not just the banking sector, it is the audit practices that have to become credible.
Naturally.
Because Satyam scam, we saw that the audit firms were fudging the accounts for the company. So that's why I'm emphasizing for the CA.
But the audit firms who forged, they have been paid fees. But the money was siphoned off by the people who were the owners of the Satyam. You know, the chartered accountants didn't siphon off the money.
No, they're helping. They're helping in fudging. So the credibility of the chartered accountants is questionable. That is what
Radhika ma'am has to add something. Yeah, do you want to
I
add?
was saying exactly the same thing, that you cannot give a clean chit to the chartered accountants. Certainly
Yes.
not.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
True.
Okay.
True.
So yeah, we have.
No,
And,
sorry, I would like to add. I would like
Yes,
to
yes.
add that the chartered accountants or cost accountants or company secretaries should be appointed by an independent agency, not by the companies themselves.
No, sir. This is not possible. ये देश में पैसा ऐसा कैसे बोल?
Okay. We can have an endless discussion on this.
one last,
Okay.
View the possible solutions. Don't give us hypotheticals.
Deshpande sir, yes sir. Deshpande sir, you have to add.
That happens, sir. In banking sector, it happens.
Let us.
Yes, everywhere it happens. It is the order of the day. It happens in my university for that matter.
Comment if at all.
Yeah.
And then we'll conclude this.
Yeah.
What I want to say.
so
We're
I'll
just going with the concluding remarks.
Yeah.
We're
Can
just
I
going
just
with the
conclude?
concluding remarks within a minute, ma'am. Please.
Okay,
Start.
Me?
Yeah, you go
Yeah.
ahead then, Radhika
Yeah.
ma'am, Anita ma'am, and
Okay, so I would just like to conclude by saying here, when the question about consumption also started, or how will the revival happen, I mentioned about agriculture and rural entrepreneurs and self-help group women and microfinance institutes. That will be the start point for the stimulus. At the same time, credibility, when we talk of, Sybil has always said that there's zero default rate at the household level of loans. So retail loans or the household level loans, they hardly have any kind of default. So make lending easier for households, so consumption can be
No.
that is one way.
Okay.
And another thing I would like to conclude is the role of MFIs, women, and of course households has to be emphasized.
Yes, very
Bhave sir बोला ना.
yes,
Bhave sir ना बोलो.
yes, sir. We'll reach to him also.
अहो
We'll
त्यांनी
reach to
चाय
him also.
पिला,
not
त्यांनी
just,
पोहे
we'll also
खाल्ले
get-
इतक्या वेळात. पोहे
Okay.
खाताना दिसले मला चाय.
Radhika ma'am, you want to add to this? You want to
No, I
just
think I'm good.
concluding
I
remarks?
think we can just conclude. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah. Anita ma'am, you want to add any
I
comments?
just want to say just one sentence for the entrepreneurs, that as I had already said, India has got the Jugaad, Juban and Junoon.
जुगाड़ and
Okay. So there is nothing to worry about. This too shall pass.
Okay, this too shall
Well
pass.
said.
and last thing which I would like to say, this
Hear me?
country is not run by
Yes, sir,
humans.
we can.
This country is not
Okay.
run by humans, it is run by God, and God will only be able to run this country.
God is watching us. Yeah, that's it. Deshpande sir, your comments. Final
Deshpande
comments.
sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Yes,
I
sir.
want to thank all the panelists and for sparing their time and kind of discussion. It was really very, very interesting, and we got number of issues relating to this particular crisis. I'll just make quick comments to just summarize. Like Radhika and others, they pointed out about the China and
US.
how be in a position to take that. Rightly point how one can competitive and for creation on the infrastructure, and Cambodia, Vietnam, they are taking space for whatever the reduction in the level of trade occur in China. About the consumption and the direct transfer, the point was raised in, I think that is the good move. Only thing is that we should not think at this moment about the universal basic income, because that would require a lot of money to be spent by the government. So this is not the time where we should think about universal basic income. But wherever you find the vulnerable section, for that direct cash transfer would definitely be benefited, and more amount of expenditure would be required to be made, especially on the health sector, and therefore for quarantine we have to create a lot of space in the coming years, and therefore should be the priority of the government in order to tackle this corona. The another important point which I would like to make, and that is the last one, that 1,70,000 crore package which is announced by the government, that would definitely help the poor sector, but package needs to be brought especially for MSME in order to revive it, in order to maintain the level of employment. And whatever the economic challenges country is facing, those challenges will be for a particular specific period of time. At this moment, I would suggest that one should not go for long-term kind of policy setup. We want short-term policy, and focus should be on how to revive the economy at the fastest possible level. Thank you so much. I thank all the participants, those who have asked questions, all our students.
From Srihari sir and Bhavesh sir. Final comments concluding, we have to conclude now. Anyone, so Srihari sir and Bhavesh sir, would you like to add something? Final comments?
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Like Deshmukh sir said, that or even Anita ma'am said, that only there will be demand for essentials. So I think L'Oreal's and alike will have to close down. and Dettol will have a good time.
Life boy.
And life boy. And secondly, like Deshmukh sir is saying, I think the haves like us must find out that what can we do for have not.
What we do.
Okay.
This I think is the need of the hour. And right now all the guesses are we making is something like finding a needle in a jungle or in a woods. I think so. Honestly speaking, none of us can have a clear idea of what is to come. This is my frank opinion.
Yes.
And thank you so much to all the learned speakers.
Chava sir, your final comments.
No, hearty congratulations to the entire team.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, it is for joining us. A special thanks to the attendees who have been sticking with us for the last 2 hours, and I hope we have made this discussion worth for you to spend so much time. And special heartiest thanks. We couldn't imagine to get Radhika ma'am, Anita ma'am, and Srihari ma'am from all the way from those other parts of the country. And my heartiest thanks to Deshpande sir, Deshmukh sir, and Deshpande sir, of course, because he has brought all these people in together. He has been the binding force behind this. I hope we have lived up to the expectations. There has been glitches and stuff, but that happens. And we really hope to meet soon again, maybe. And maybe in person, that's going to be the most desirable thing, especially to me, having known all these special people. So one important announcement, this meeting has been recorded. So all the essential important points which all of you have said, I'm going to write it down and send a proper PDF file to the group. So that's going to be beneficial to each and every person. So have a nice day ahead and a wonderful quarantine time. I hope read a lot of books. Good, feel good.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ashmat. You coordinated very well. Ashmat, you coordinated very well, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. It reminds us back to our college days where we used to sit and discuss in the canteen.
Started with that, Surya. You missed that part actually.
I heard that. I was able to hear. I heard it. Yeah. So it is like a recap of our canteen days, I would say. Only thing missing was the samosa and chai.
I know.
When we come, we will have.
Radhika pointed out in the beginning.
Yeah. So next time, Ashma.
Maybe someday, sometime soon.
Yes.
Sure.
Maybe sometime soon we'll all gather together over a samosa. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Nikita, we just stop.